All hell broke loose in the plane's tight quarters. Massive bangs went off, passengers screamed, and debris scattered in all directions. The wind howled like a banshee to claim the lives of those aboard. In a nightmare twist, the captain was yanked out the window into the sky at an altitude of 17,000 feet while the plane was falling. How and what happened next is what we'll find out. This is the story of British Airways Flight 5390. Stay tuned.
Hey, dears. Fly, Eat, Repeat fabulous folks. Welcome to the premiere episode of Fly, Eat, Repeat, the show where we defy gravity, dance in the skies, and soar above the clouds. Dear, it's a gray Sunday morning, on June 10th, 1990, in the United Kingdom. As British Airways Flight 5390 prepares to depart from Birmingham International Airport, destined for the sun-kissed shores of Malaga, Spain, 81 passengers, accompanied by a dedicated crew of 4, and 2 seasoned pilots at the helm, their trusty vessel, a 19-year-old BAC One-Eleven. Dear, the BAC One-Eleven boasts a reputation as the brave heart of heaven. Its hull weight is 43 tons, with its twin rear-mounted low-bypass jet engines. This particular aircraft had been grounded for 27 hours before this flight for mandatory maintenance, prompted by reports of anomalies such as darkening and some bubbles on the left-hand windscreen. In the cockpit sat Captain Tim Lancaster, at 42 years old, with over 11,050 hours of flight time, including 1,075 hours on the BAC One-Eleven. Alongside him was First Officer Alastair Atchison, boasting 7,500 hours overall, including 1,100 hours on the BAC One-Eleven. They formed a dynamic duo ready to take on the skies. The day began like any other Sunday flight, with gray skies but promising weather. The crew radiated enthusiasm, anticipating a smooth journey to a holiday hotspot. They knew each other well. They were a close-knit team. The only newcomer was First Officer Alastair. The flight crew had prepared for the flight as usual. No bad weather was expected. Following standard procedures, Alastair took control of the takeoff, and Timothy took over shortly after. Then he would be the pilot flying for the rest of the flight. With spirits high, carrying the hopes of passengers seeking sunshine and relaxation, the aircraft took off towards Malaga at 8:20 local time. So it's time to hit that like and subscribe button. Fly, eat, repeat.
Yeah.
Fly, eat, repeat. Dear, departing from Birmingham meant navigating through London's busy airspace. Flight 5390 received instructions to climb to different altitudes, eventually reaching their cruising height. Initially, their course was set, heading south on a bearing of 195 degrees, heading for flight level altitudes of 14,000 feet, where they would remain for a while. They were then cleared to climb to flight level 23,000 feet. Their waiting would be ended after cruising altitude of 25,000 feet. With the initial procedures complete, the crew started to relax. As pilots, we follow strict seatbelt rules during takeoff and landing, but in between, we can loosen up a bit. Our harnesses have a waist belt, a lap belt, and shoulder straps. The shoulder straps are often the first to go because while important, they can be uncomfortable. A simple button release loosens the shoulder straps, leaving the rest of the harness secure. This is what Captain Tim did for more comfort as he prepared for breakfast service.
Suddenly, at 17,300 feet, just 5,000 feet from their target altitude, a huge bang shattered the peaceful atmosphere in the cockpit. A rush of air filled the cabin as the cockpit door slammed shut, wedging itself behind the controls. Amid the chaos, the unimaginable happened. The captain's upper body was sucked out through the shattered windshield. His leg remained inside, tangled in the flight controls.
Lancaster heard a scraping sound, but before he could react, he was gone. He found himself outside the plane, in the clouds, alongside the birds. Thinking fast, a cabin crew member named Nigel Ogden rushed to grab the captain's leg, preventing him from slipping further out. However, the captain's upper body was hitting the fuselage of the aircraft. Dear, as the captain was sucked out the window, his feet had already pushed the flight controls. As they did so, they disconnected the autopilot, thrusting the first officer into an unparalleled crisis. With explosive decompression, large amounts of debris, a massive flow of really cold air, and noise in the cabin, he could see his colleague flying outside. BAC One-Eleven does not have automatic masks for passengers, nor was this a requirement when BAC One-Eleven was certified. There was passenger oxygen that could be given to about 18 passengers on demand. Amid turmoil aboard British Airways Flight 5390, Susan Gibbons, the flight attendant, emerged as an icon of courage and compassion. She ensured the safety of passengers amid chaos and uncertainty. Susan's calm demeanor and quick thinking exemplified true heroism in the face of adversity. The first officer realized very quickly that the first thing he had to do was to get the plane down quickly. Now he had the option, at this point, to put on his oxygen mask as well. But he realized they were at 17,300 feet when it happened, but as the autopilot had been disconnected and the captain had kicked the flight controls, the aircraft had already started a rapid descent. So he decided there was no need for his oxygen mask to facilitate communication with air traffic control and the cabin crew, who is now holding the captain's life by his leg. So the first officer is now flying the plane. He keeps his course at 195 degrees. He has begun his descent and is now calling a mayday to air traffic control, but when they responded, he couldn't hear them amid chaos and noise inside the cockpit. Another problem was that a few minutes later, when air traffic control realized they were dealing with a serious emergency, they continued to deal with other traffic on the frequency, a critical flaw that the investigation was going to focus on later. Dear, as the aircraft descends towards 10,000 feet, Nigel Ogden's grip on the captain weakens in the face of the howling wind and bone-chilling cold. Also, the strong wind is minus 17 degrees Celsius. He suffers from frostbite on his arms and under his left eye.
The price he pays for holding onto his captain.
If he lets the captain go, the captain has two possibilities. The first possibility is that he flies with some momentum at an altitude of 17,000 feet, after which gravity takes over. The second possibility is that the plane's engine will suck him, and at that time gravity will find nothing to attract. After witnessing Nigel's plight, the cabin crew jumped into action. The purser rushed to collect the wreckage while the second crew member, John Heward, rushed to relieve Nigel's weary grip. With frostbite that broke his bones, Nigel relinquishes his grip, allowing his teammates to secure the precarious position of captain. Amidst the disruption of British Airways Flight 5390, as the captain's body was sucked into the frigid air, the cabin crew faced an unimaginable trial of strength and endurance. While gripping the captain's body, they battled against the fierce rush of icy air that threatened to tear them apart. With every painful moment, although they witnessed the horrifying scene of their captain's bloodied body colliding with the fuselage, they remained hopeful and refused to give up. John Heward holds the captain's ankles and he will remain inside the cockpit for the rest of the flight. As the plane is now landing, the first officer asks air traffic control to send radar directions towards Gatwick Airport because this is an airport he knows well. Air traffic control also told him that Southampton Airport was very close to him. He can choose which of these airports he wants to go to. First Officer Alastair was hesitant but realized he wanted to get to the ground as soon as possible. So he approved Southampton Airport but also said it needed about 2,500 meters of runway. Southampton Airport is only about 1,700 meters away. Air traffic control relays this information to the first officer. So he was a bit hesitant. Later he realized they had just taken off from Birmingham, had a lot of fuel on board, and were probably very heavy. Crunching numbers quickly, the first officer approved Southampton's 1,700 meter runway. Dear, picture this. The first officer is dealing with a serious emergency for his aircraft. He doesn't have a mate to help him here, and he can't use the cabin crew to help him read checklists, because they are holding the captain. So, it's all up to him now. He has to make a visual approach to an unfamiliar airport. So, this will cause a lot of pressure on the first officer. But even though he was under this pressure, he managed to prepare the plane and prepare for landing safely. The first officer informed air traffic control that the captain had been pulled out the window and was believed to be dead.
As the plane descended to about 3,000 feet, a miraculous sight unfolded. The captain's legs stirred to life.
Dear, after the incident, the captain described that when he got sucked out, he was initially conscious. He was surprised that he could breathe. Eventually, he lost consciousness but regained it later on. So, when the plane stops on runway 2 at Southampton Airport, passengers are dropped off at the regular exits. At 8:55 local time, Flight 5390 landed successfully. The landing took place 35 minutes after takeoff from Birmingham. In total, Lancaster was constrained outside the cockpit for more than 20 minutes.
As soon as Alastair Atchison stopped the plane, he took off the headphones and cried like a baby as he was so stressed.
Then the firefighter comes and helps the captain get out of the sight. He is still hanging outside the plane window. They took him to an ambulance. It turns out that apart from frostbite, a broken thumb, and a broken arm, he's fine. The only other person to suffer injury on this flight was Nigel Ogden, who while bravely holding onto the captain suffered some frostbite damage to one eye and a dislocated shoulder. But all the passengers could disembark safely. In the end, the captain recovered and returned to duty 5 months later. But what causes this air disaster? How could the windshield suddenly detach itself and fly away into the air?
Hit that like and subscribe button. Fly, eat, repeat, fabulous folks. Stay tuned for the answers.
Fly, eat, repeat. Dear, examining the maintenance records of British Airways Flight 5390, investigators discovered a crucial detail. During a night shift just 27 hours before departure, the maintenance crew noticed the captain's side windshield needed replacing. Due to staffing shortages, the maintenance manager himself took charge. He went to the plane in the hangar while it was raining outside and set up a workstation to do maintenance. The problem was that it was a bit tight, so he couldn't get the workstation into place. Dear, the missing window was found in Colsey, Oxfordshire, around 5.5 miles, 9 kilometers away from the location where decompression took place. Upon further inspection, in a total of 90 bolts, investigators found that 84 of the bolts used were 0.66 millimeters too small in diameter, while the remaining 6 were the correct diameter but 2.5 millimeters too short. This seemingly small difference meant that the bolts were unable to withstand the air pressure difference between the cabin and the outside atmosphere, causing the decompression of the cabin and the captain being sucked out of the cockpit. The shift maintenance manager was found to be responsible for installing the incorrect bolts that failed to follow British Airways requirements. The investigators also criticized the processes themselves, which should have mandated testing or verification by another person for this crucial task. Lastly, they attributed the shift maintenance manager's working practices to the lack of direct monitoring by Birmingham Airport management. Dear, 8 different recommendations came out of this accident investigation. The most important ones were that 1. The system review was needed where one engineer could be both doing an engineering task and self-certifying that it had been properly done. 2. That system also needed to be a better, more efficient quality assurance program outlined. 3. Recurrent training should be introduced to engineers. 4. Air traffic controllers needed to get a course on how to deal with emergencies before they were certified. The crew of British Airways Flight 5390 were recognized for their heroism following the incident. Alastair Atchison and flight attendants Susan Gibbons and Nigel Ogden were awarded the Queen's Commendation for valuable service in the air. Additionally, Atchison was awarded a Polaris Award in 1992 for his bravery. Fly, eat, repeat, fabulous folks. Trust in your plane's safety, be aware of emergency situations, follow crew instructions, and hey, fly, eat, repeat, fabulous folks. Watch the previous episodes, keep an eye out for the upcoming ones, check out the sources below, hit that subscribe button, and always remember this wisdom: the human spirit always triumphs over adversity.